The storm had passed, but the air was heavy with dread as the townspeople gathered in silence, their eyes darting toward the saloon doors. Suddenly, a bloodied figure staggered in, collapsing across the floorboards, his voice trembling as he cried, "They're coming! The Comanche ride at dawn!" Ethan Graves steadied him, his heart tightening with the weight of a past he thought buried. Clara Dawson gasped, clutching the counter for balance, while Jed Parker whispered, "No one survives the chief's war cry." Old Ben Carter's weathered hand gripped his cane tighter, his gaze hardened with grim memory. Outside, thunder echoed like distant drums of war, and Marshal Cole Harding exchanged a sly look with Silas Kane, a glint of calculation in their eyes. Shadows deepened in the corners of the saloon, and all knew the past was no longer behind them. It was breaking through the door with vengeance. The storm's echo lingered as Ethan Graves led the wounded man to a chair, his voice edged with tension as he demanded, "What did you see?" The man's lips quivered, eyes rolling back as he whispered, "Chief Tahu rides, and he carries the fire of vengeance." Jed Parker froze, his throat dry as he muttered, "No one's safe now." Clara Dawson pressed her trembling hands together, praying silently. Marshal Cole Harding leaned forward, voice smooth as silk, "Maybe the chief should have been buried long ago." Silas Kane chuckled coldly, drawing stares from the townsfolk. Old Ben Carter's lone eye closed, as though bracing for ghosts of battles past. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the plains where destiny approached like a storm that refused to be silenced. The town's silence grew heavier as the wounded man slumped, lifeless, leaving only the echo of his warning. Ethan Graves stood tall, his chest heaving, the truth clawing at his heart. Jed Parker shook his head in disbelief, whispering, "We'll all be dead by dawn." Clara Dawson's eyes glistened with fear and sorrow, but her voice steadied as she said, "We must prepare, or none of us will live." Marshal Cole Harding placed a firm hand on the table, his tone carrying false confidence. "Fear is a weapon, and I intend to wield it." Silas Kane smirked, his fingers drumming the rifle, as old Ben Carter muttered low, "Chief Tahu does not forget, nor does he forgive." The storm outside gave way to silence so deep it felt unnatural. Ethan Graves moved toward the swinging doors, staring at the horizon cloaked in black clouds. Clara Dawson called softly, "Don't go out there, Ethan." His jaw tightened, but his voice cracked with memory. "I buried too many to stay blind." Jed Parker rose, fire in his eyes despite his fear. "Then we fight, side by side." Old Ben Carter's cane tapped against the floor, his tone sharp, "You'll fight, but you'll bleed. The chief doesn't strike without cause." Marshal Cole Harding smirked, whispering to Silas Kane, "Perhaps cause is what we gave him." Their words settled like poison, and the town held its breath. The wind howled through the town's narrow streets, carrying whispers of drums from the plains. Ethan Graves stood firm, every nerve alive with dread and duty. Clara Dawson drew close, her voice trembling. "Will you face him, Ethan?" His eyes burned with resolve. "I've been running from him my whole life." Jed Parker's courage flared as he added, "Then you won't run alone." Old Ben Carter sighed, ancient sorrow in his tone. "Blood will answer blood tonight." Marshal Cole Harding tapped his boot, whispering to Silas Kane, "This is our chance to seize control if the chief doesn't claim them first." Beyond the saloon doors, the night seemed to watch with hungry eyes. Dawn crept over the plains, the storm's ruin leaving mud and silence across the town's narrow streets. Ethan Graves stood at the edge of the boardwalk, his eyes locked on the horizon where the sky burned red. Clara Dawson stepped beside him, her voice low yet firm. "You fear what you've already lived through." Ethan's jaw tightened as he answered, "I fear what I buried is rising again." Jed Parker stumbled out from the saloon, his youthful defiance masking terror. "If Chief Tahu's coming, I'll ride with you," he said, chest puffed though his hands trembled. Old Ben Carter watched them, his cane planted hard in the dirt, muttering, "The chief's vengeance runs deeper than any of you understand." Marshal Cole Harding leaned against a post, eyes sharp, smirking as he added, "Maybe vengeance is what this town deserves." The morning air carried the smell of wet earth, but tension clung heavier than any storm. Clara Dawson poured coffee into a tin cup, her hand steady though her heart raced. "We need to talk about what comes next," she said firmly. Ethan Graves leaned on the table, voice low. "The chief doesn't ride without reason." Jed Parker leaned forward, eager yet naive. "Then we find his reason, and end it." Old Ben Carter's eye narrowed, his voice sharp. "A Comanche chief doesn't need reason. He carries memory, and memory is sharper than steel." Marshal Cole Harding brushed dust from his coat with studied calm. "If this is memory, then let's turn it into a grave they won't rise from." The silence afterward was suffocating, each word hanging like smoke in the stale air. The plains stretched endlessly beyond the town, golden grass bending under the morning wind. Ethan Graves mounted his horse, eyes scanning the horizon. Jed Parker adjusted his hat nervously, muttering, "Feels like the earth itself is waiting." Clara Dawson stood near the corral, her gaze unwavering. "The chief is closer than you think." Old Ben Carter leaned heavily on the fence, his voice a warning carved from stone. "Once the chief rides, he doesn't stop till the blood debt is paid." Marshal Cole Harding smirked, mounting his horse with polished ease, then let him ride into his own ruin. Ethan's breath was steady, yet his hands clenched the reins, as though trying to hold on to something more than control. The land itself seemed alive, watching, waiting for the first move. As noon pressed down with dry heat, Ethan Graves led them along the outskirts of town, dust rising under each step. Clara Dawson walked beside him, her tone calm but firm. "Every path leads to choice, Ethan. What will you choose when he arrives?" Ethan's face hardened, voice cutting like steel. "The past left me no choice." Jed Parker carried his rifle awkwardly, determined despite his inexperience. Old Ben Carter dragged his cane through the dust, whispering, "The chief will test your soul before your strength." Marshal Cole Harding chuckled coldly. "Souls don't win battles, steel does." The wind shifted, carrying faint echoes of distant drums across the plains, and for the first time, even Cole's smirk faltered. They gathered near the edge of the plains, where grass swayed like an ocean beneath a sky of steel. Ethan Graves dismounted, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Clara Dawson stepped forward, her voice steady yet full of sorrow. "This isn't just his war, Ethan, it's yours." Ethan's reply was heavy with guilt. "I left him behind, and he never forgave me." Jed Parker looked between them, confused, whispering, "You knew the chief." Old Ben Carter's cane struck the ground as he barked. "Blood ties run deeper than Graves, boy." Marshal Cole Harding laughed sharply. "Now the truth bleeds out. Perhaps this battle isn't the chief's alone, it's Graves' reckoning." The wind roared across the plains, carrying the weight of secrets long buried. The sun bled across the horizon, painting the plains in red as Ethan Graves led the group deeper into the outskirts. Jed Parker stumbled in the dust, but his voice carried stubborn fire. "I won't fall back, not when you need me." Ethan's face remained stone, but a flicker of doubt shadowed his eyes. Clara Dawson rode close, her words sharp. "Courage without wisdom is a death sentence." Old Ben Carter raised his cane, pointing toward the distance, muttering, "Look well, death rides fast when the drums begin." Marshal Cole Harding reined his horse with a sly grin, whispering to Silas Kane, "Fear makes men weak, and weak men are easy to break." The land stretched endless and merciless, and every sound carried like an omen waiting to strike. They reached a ridge overlooking the plains, where smoke curled from hidden fires. Ethan Graves narrowed his eyes, every heartbeat heavy with memory. Clara Dawson spoke softly, "This isn't a raid, it's a message." Jed Parker tightened his grip on the rifle, whispering, "Then what's it say?" Old Ben Carter answered with a voice thick as ash, "It says he remembers betrayal." Marshal Cole Harding chuckled darkly, "Messages are wasted unless we answer them in kind." Ethan's jaw clenched, words cutting like steel, "Answer wrong, and you won't live to regret it." Silence fell heavy, broken only by the distant call of crows. The ridge held them like a courtroom, each man and woman facing judgment from the land itself. As the wind shifted, a lone rider appeared on the horizon, vanishing and reappearing in waves of dust. Ethan Graves felt his chest tighten, memories clawing at him. Clara Dawson whispered, a scout testing the ground. Jed Parker raised his rifle, but Ethan snapped, lower it. He's not here to kill. Old Ben Carter's single eye burned with certainty. He's here to remind you of your past. Marshal Cole Harding smirked, his voice dripping poison, or he's here to show the town who their real enemy is. Ethan's silence was louder than any denial, and Clara's eyes searched his face, seeing truths he refused to speak aloud. The rider vanished once more, leaving only the weight of history pressing against them. Back in the town, the saloon filled with murmurs as townspeople pressed against the walls, their fear a living thing. Ethan Graves entered first, the room falling silent at his presence. Clara Dawson followed, her steady voice urging, "We must prepare, or we are already lost." Jed Parker blurted, "If the chief comes, we fight." Old Ben Carter slammed his cane, growling. Fools rush to graves faster than bullets. Marshal Cole Harding raised his glass, smiling to the crowd, and yet graves are dug deeper when fear rules the living. Silas Kane stood near the doorway, rifle resting casually, his silence more threatening than any word. Shadows crawled along the walls, and the air tasted of smoke and waiting doom. Night fell swift and heavy, stars veiled by storm clouds. Ethan Graves walked the empty street, boots echoing like drum beats. Clara Dawson joined him, her voice hushed. "You carry something deeper than fear." Ethan's gaze stayed fixed on the plains. "I carry his blood." Jed Parker trailed behind, confusion breaking through. "What do you mean, his blood?" Old Ben Carter stepped from the shadows, cane tapping slow. "The truth bleeds tonight, boy. Chief Tahu's war is not against the town, but against the brother who betrayed him." Ethan's silence was answer enough. Marshal Cole Harding appeared with sly satisfaction. "And now the town will pay for family sins." Thunder rolled above, as if the heavens themselves passed judgment. The night's silence cracked beneath the weight of whispers as Ethan Graves returned to the saloon. Shadows clung to the walls, stretching like secrets. Clara Dawson met his gaze, her voice low. "You're hiding more than you'll admit." Ethan stiffened but said nothing. Jed Parker's voice trembled as he blurted, "If the chief is your kin, then we're already doomed." Old Ben Carter slammed his cane against the floor. "Not doomed. Tested." Marshal Cole Harding's smirk widened, his tone sharp. "Tested or betrayed. Perhaps the town bleeds because of him." Silas Kane leaned casually in the corner, his silence cutting deeper than words. The room grew colder, as if the truth itself had stolen the warmth from the air. At dawn, the town stirred under fear's grip, voices hushed, eyes avoiding truth. Ethan Graves stood by the corral, shoulders weighed down, while Clara Dawson pressed him. "Say it aloud, Ethan. Who is Chief Tahu to you?" His silence roared louder than thunder. Jed Parker, wide-eyed, whispered, "Brother." Old Ben Carter's single eye burned with sadness. "Blood does not forget, boy." Marshal Cole Harding seized the moment, his voice slicing like a knife. "And now the whole town pays for the sins of one family." Silas Kane's hand brushed the barrel of his rifle, lips curling as though savoring the thought of chaos. The rising sun painted the ground in fire, as if judgment had arrived with the morning. The townspeople gathered in the square, eyes darting with suspicion. Ethan Graves felt their stares pierce like arrows, their whispers louder than shouts. Clara Dawson tried to calm them, her voice steady. "We stand together, or we fall alone." Jed Parker shouted, desperate, "He's not our enemy." Old Ben Carter's cane struck the dust, echoing like a drum. "The chief comes for vengeance, not conquest." Marshal Cole Harding stepped forward, voice ringing sharp, "And vengeance kills just as sure. Who here trusts a man who shares the chief's blood?" Murmurs turned into growls, the air electric with doubt. Silas Kane's grin widened, feeding on the fear like a predator savoring the hunt. As dusk fell, Ethan Graves sat alone on the church steps, the silence pressing against him. Clara Dawson approached, her voice heavy with compassion. You carry guilt that's not yours alone." Ethan shook his head, whispering, "I left him to die, Clara. He rose as a chief, and I rose as a coward." Jed Parker appeared, his voice cracking. "You're no coward, Ethan. You're the only one we have." Old Ben Carter's cane tapped behind them, his voice soft. "Truth cuts, but it frees." Marshal Cole Harding lingered in the shadows, smirk curving as he muttered to Silas Kane, "Let them drown in confession. It makes the killing easier." The church bells groaned, as if mourning what was yet to come. That night, firelight flickered across the saloon walls as Ethan Graves faced his companions. Clara Dawson stood firm at his side, her voice unwavering, "You cannot fight shadows alone." Ethan met her eyes, voice rough, "I may already be fighting ghosts." Jed Parker's fists clenched, his words fierce, "Then let us be your shield." Old Ben Carter leaned forward, cane steady, shields break, faith endures. Marshal Cole Harding raised a glass, mocking, "Faith won't stop a bullet, nor will it save this town." Silas Kane chuckled low, hand resting on his rifle, eyes gleaming. The fire popped, sparks flying like warnings, while outside the night carried whispers of drums echoing closer. The night was restless, stars buried beneath storm clouds, when Ethan Graves stood alone in the field beyond town. Clara Dawson approached, her voice steady yet trembling. "What truth are you hiding from us?" Ethan's eyes burned as he whispered, "Chief Tahu is my brother." The air seemed to collapse under the weight of his words. Jed Parker staggered, shaking his head, "You've been leading us against your own blood." Old Ben Carter lowered his gaze. Sorrow etched deep. "Blood is a chain, even when broken." Marshal Cole Harding's laugh rang cruel and sharp. "The traitor finally speaks." Silas Kane leaned on his rifle, smirking. "Now the chief's vengeance makes sense." Thunder cracked above as if sealing Ethan's confession in fire. The confession spread through the town like wildfire, whispers twisting into accusations. Ethan Graves faced the townspeople, his voice hard, "I left him behind, but I never raised a hand against you." Clara Dawson cried, "Your silence was your betrayal." Jed Parker tried to shield him, shouting, "He stood with us when no one else would." Old Ben Carter muttered, "Blood debts are never forgotten, only delayed." Marshal Cole Harding seized the moment, addressing the crowd, "You follow a man who carries the chief's blood. Who among you will pay the price for his kinship?" Silas Kane's smirk widened as hands gripped weapons, fear and fury mingling like sparks ready to burn the night. That night, Ethan Graves walked the church aisle, shadows heavy on the cracked wooden floor. Clara Dawson followed, her voice breaking, "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan's tone was raw, because truth makes enemies of friends. Jed Parker leaned against a pew, voice rising, "We'd follow you, Ethan, even knowing." Old Ben Carter shook his head, "Truth cannot be hidden forever. It poisons those who bury it." Outside, drums echoed faint across the plains, steady as a heartbeat. Marshal Cole Harding's silhouette darkened the doorway, voice dripping venom, "The chief doesn't need to destroy this town, you're doing it for him." Silas Kane's laughter followed, like a blade slicing through the silence. By the river, moonlight scattered across rippling water, and Ethan Graves finally spoke his truth to Clara Dawson. His voice shook, "Tahu was left to die when I escaped. He rose as chief while I carried shame." Clara's eyes glistened, her voice steady, "Shame doesn't define you, choices do." Jed Parker appeared, defiant, "Then choose to fight with us, not against him." Old Ben Carter's tone was heavy as stone, "No man escapes the weight of blood." Marshal Cole Harding watched from the trees, whispering to Silas Kane, "The town will turn against him by dawn. All we need is fear." The river's current carried whispers of drums, louder now as if the land itself joined the chief's march. The drums drew nearer, each beat pounding like a heart against the town's chest. Ethan Graves gathered what allies he had left, his voice unyielding, "Chief Tahu comes for me, not for you." Clara Dawson clasped his arm, whispering, "Then don't face him alone." Jed Parker shouted, "If you ride, I ride with you." Old Ben Carter shook his head, voice worn, "Two brothers meet not as men, but as storms." Marshal Cole Harding addressed the crowd, voice smooth as poison. Let him fight alone, and the chief will swallow him whole. Silas Kane's laughter rolled low, like thunder promising ruin. The town's fate teetered on a knife's edge, waiting for the dawn of reckoning. Dawn broke with the sound of drums rolling across the plains like thunder. Ethan Graves stood at the edge of town, his breath steady, though his heart thundered. Clara Dawson moved to his side, her voice quiet yet fierce. "You don't face this storm alone." Jed Parker gripped his rifle, his hands shaking, but his tone rang clear. "We'll fight with you till the end." Old Ben Carter leaned heavy on his cane, whispering, "The chief brings more than warriors, he brings judgment." Marshal Cole Harding smirked, addressing the gathering townsfolk. "Let Graves fight his brother. Our survival depends on it." Silas Kane loaded his rifle with a grin, eager for chaos. The horizon glowed with firelight, the Comanche advancing like shadows born of flame. The first Comanche riders burst across the plains, their war cries piercing the dawn. Ethan Graves clenched his jaw, whispering, "Brother, I hear you." Clara Dawson pulled her shawl tighter, whispering prayers between breaths. Jed Parker raised his rifle, shouting, "They're here!" Old Ben Carter muttered, "Steel against spirit. Spirit always outlasts steel." Marshal Cole Harding barked to the townsfolk, "Hold the line, or you'll be trampled beneath it." Silas Kane fired the first shot, his laugh echoing through the smoke. The riders closed in, dust rising like a storm, and the ground trembled with the force of vengeance carried by hooves. Ethan steadied his revolver, knowing every choice from here was final. The town erupted into chaos as bullets split the morning air. Ethan Graves fired into the dust, his mind torn between duty and blood. Clara Dawson dragged a wounded townsman to cover, her dress stained with dust and blood. Jed Parker shouted, "We can't hold them!" Old Ben Carter's voice cut through the noise, "You hold, or you die." Marshal Cole Harding pushed civilians forward as shields, sneering, "Better them than me." Silas Kane moved like a wolf among sheep, rifle spitting death as he laughed through the smoke. The Comanche circled, their arrows raining down, and the cries of battle filled the sky. Ethan's heart pounded with each shot, the shadow of his brother's arrival drawing closer. Through the chaos, a horn's cry silenced the street. From the smoke emerged Chief Tahu, mounted tall, his face painted with fire and sorrow. Ethan Graves froze, revolver lowering as his chest heaved. Clara Dawson's voice broke, "Ethan, it's him." Jed Parker whispered, "The chief himself." Old Ben Carter leaned on his cane, his single eye wet. Blood meets blood at last. Marshal Cole Harding's smirk faltered for the first time, his voice shaking, "So the legend rides true." Silas Kane steadied his rifle with a grin, eager to strike. Chief Tahu's gaze locked on Ethan, and the world seemed to narrow until only the two brothers remained, past and present colliding in silence. The battlefield hushed as Chief Tahu dismounted, his steps slow, his eyes locked on Ethan Graves. Ethan dropped his weapon, voice raw, "Brother, I did not come to fight you." Chief Tahu's silence was heavier than any roar. Clara Dawson's hand gripped Ethan's arm, whispering, "This is your reckoning." Jed Parker shouted, "Don't shoot him!" Old Ben Carter's voice carried like prophecy, "Blood ties end in blood." Marshal Cole Harding raised his pistol, snarling, "End it now before he does." Silas Kane grinned, finger tightening on the trigger. The two brothers stood face to face, the world holding its breath, knowing that one step would decide the fate of them all. The battlefield hung in silence as Ethan Graves faced Chief Tahu, their eyes locked, neither lifting a weapon. Clara Dawson whispered, "Ethan, speak." His voice broke, "I left you, brother, but I never forgot you." Chief Tahu's gaze burned, his silence heavier than thunder. Jed Parker shouted desperately, "This isn't war, it's family!" Old Ben Carter's voice cracked with sorrow, "Family can destroy more than enemies." Marshal Cole Harding sneered, pistol still raised, "Then let brothers kill brothers while the town burns." Silas Kane's grin widened, hungry for blood. Yet the Comanche warriors held back, waiting on their chief's breath. The town waited too, suspended between salvation and ruin. Chief Tahu finally spoke, his voice deep and thunderous. "You left me to the fire, and the fire made me chief." Ethan Graves lowered his head, replying, "I left because I was weak, not because I wished you dead." Clara Dawson's tears shone as she whispered, "You're bound by blood, not hate." Jed Parker shouted, "Then end this now before more die." Old Ben Carter muttered, "Blood debts end only in one grave." Marshal Cole Harding hissed, "Graves or Tahu, one will fall." Silas Kane raised his rifle, his laughter cracking the silence. Yet Chief Tahu raised his hand, and his warriors froze, waiting for his judgment. The stillness shattered as Silas Kane fired without warning. The bullet missed Chief Tahu but tore into the air like betrayal given form. Chaos erupted, Comanche warriors surging forward. Ethan Graves tackled Silas, fists striking with fury. Clara Dawson screamed, dragging Jed Parker toward cover. Old Ben Carter shouted over the clash, "This isn't fate's doing, it's man's greed." Marshal Cole Harding tried to rally the crowd, but fear scattered them. Chief Tahu's warriors encircled the square, yet the chief himself stood unmoved, his gaze locked on Ethan. Blood spilled into the dust, but the true battle was between two brothers chained by history. The fighting slowed as Chief Tahu strode into the center, raising his hand once more. His warriors obeyed instantly, silence falling like an axe. Ethan Graves rose, bloodied and breathless, facing his brother. Chief Tahu's voice thundered, "The land remembers, and the land demands blood." Ethan's reply cracked with pain, "Then take mine, but spare the town." Clara Dawson cried out, "Don't sacrifice yourself, Ethan." Jed Parker's voice broke, "You're more than his brother, you're ours too." Old Ben Carter whispered, "Sacrifice is the only way peace is bought." Marshal Cole Harding cursed, "Let him die if it saves us." The night burned with waiting judgment, one breath from destiny. Chief Tahu stepped closer, eyes locked on Ethan Graves. For a long moment, neither spoke, the town frozen in fear. Then the chief lowered his weapon, his voice heavy, "The fire is quenched when blood admits its guilt." Ethan dropped to his knees, whispering, "Then let my guilt be enough." Clara Dawson rushed to him, tears streaming, "You're no coward, Ethan, you're the reason we live." Jed Parker shouted, "The chief spared us." Old Ben Carter's voice shook, "Peace born of mercy is rare, guard it well." Marshal Cole Harding turned away in fury, while Silas Kane lay beaten and bound. The drums faded into silence, and the dawn rose, painting the sky with fragile hope.